Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second immersive discussion, our Black Magic immersive discussion. But we'll talk about spatial, we'll talk about immersive, we'll talk about a lot of those things here. Anyway, we're glad to have you, and we've got a great set of things to talk about today. From front row again, we have Brenton Henry. Hey, Brenton.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so good to have you here. And we have Adam Lisagor, who is known as Sandwich. We've talked about Sandwich on MacBreak, Jason Snell and Adam have been long time friends. What's funny is I don't understand how you and I have not talked for forever. Like
I know it's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird, especially because we're aligned in so many ways and building towards the same future, living in the same future, as we like to say.
Yeah,
and know so many of the same people. So, like, what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, really great to have you here. You just did a commercial, or you did behind the scenes for a commercial with the immersive camera. What? Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, it's a fun story. So I own a creative studio called Sandwich Video originally, and we make commercials largely for tech companies to help them launch or release new products. And so I was working with a client called robot.com, formerly known as KiwiBot. And they're one of these big companies that are doing like delivery bots that you would see roaming around the streets in some towns or college campuses, or cargo bots, or they have a humanoid bot and a little robo dog that wanders the street advertising at you. And so they were launching their rebrand as robot.com. Often Sandwich shoots in Nashville, where we have a kind of a satellite crew and a director we love working with. So I, as the creative director, went to Nashville to be on the shoot. Now, our URSA Cine Immersive camera had just shipped to us, and we pre-ordered it back in January. And we were so lucky to get our pre-order in. And then it's like, you don't know what you're going to do with it until you get it. You can dream a dream, but ours finally showed up. The first thing I did was I took it to Victoria, BC with me to do a talk on the future of video. And I didn't shoot anything with it. And honestly, the software didn't even work yet.
Now, when did you have it? When did it show up for you?
It showed up in August.
Yeah. So a lot of us got to play with versions in August, and Brent got
it,
so it's all it was all very new. Like, it was like, oh, I hope this works.
It was brand new, and like literally firmware was not available for it yet, and you had to get into that forum and then like figure out where to. Anyway, so I had it was a paperweight, like a very expensive, just heavy paperweight that I brought up in a Pelican case. So it was there with me as I talked about the future of video, and it was a fascination. And then I brought it with me to Nashville for this shoot, not knowing, again, what I was going to do with it. The client didn't know I was going to be shooting anything with it, but I knew I had to take advantage of the opportunity to be on set with it and capture what I could and see if I could turn it into commercial form in some way. So I ended up just squeezing myself into wherever I could fit, trying to remove as much crew and gear from the 180-degree plus capture. You can't call it a frame, right? And so I was able to get 1 or 2 setups or shots per setup. And my idea was that I was going to be sort of just like creating a parallel version for immersive video as its own separate deliverable, tell the same story with the same elements. And at Sandwich, we've done this before, but usually we go in the opposite direction. We do it for TikTok video, right? Like, we have our full.
And so instead of having 9:16, you have 180 degrees.
Exactly. 8K of unmanageable data nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
So, and me with like, a couple of SSDs and 2 big batteries. Anyway, so I was a crew of 1, and I captured a shot for each setup, brought it back with me, put it onto the drives, and forgot about it for a couple months while we did post on the real spot. And then when it came time closer to launch date for this brand, I dug out the dailies and I looked at the cut that we'd made with its visual effects and its mix and its color, and it looked great and sounded great. And then I'm like, how the heck am I going to do this to 8K 90 frames per, like 16K 90 frames per second? Not going to happen. So I decided to lean into that. And instead of trying to make it a parallel pixel perfect presentation of the same story, I basically used it for its environment that it existed, and I layered the 2D commercial into it so that our audience could watch the clean, perfect 2D version of the spot within the environment in which it was produced with all of the
Which I think is so
robots.
cool. I think it's really there's a really interesting thing because a lot of times you want to see the behind the scenes of how something got done,
Yeah.
and but it is very like it's like you're looking through a periscope of this is what is there.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think it's fantastic. I saw little bits and pieces of it. We looked at a Mac break. I don't know if you can show us some of
Sure.
the backed up version of it, but I think that other filmmakers could definitely use this. This would be a great way to use the immersive of trying to have some way to float that window over top of it. And in your case,
I,
it's burned in, right? It's not like a floating window over top of an immersive window.
no. And for some reason it's 320 by 240 resolution right now. So
Oh,
I don't know why that's happening, but let me see if I can get it to a little bit better here. So this is the VR 180 that I put up on YouTube. It's not better. It's hardly better resolution, but you can get the idea, which is there.
yeah,
So we're in this environment. You see silks there, and you see some remnants of gear because I was not about to ask this crew, "Hey guys, I need to play with my new toy."
right.
And that's
Well,
what
and there should
all,
be gear. I mean, in many ways, I
yeah.
think that's the cool part is as a filmmaker, you kind of want to see where did they put the silks and where did they put the reflectors and where did they put the cameras. I mean, I think that's an
Exactly.
interesting
And
piece of the puzzle.
it's interesting content. And that's what I didn't really realize until I realized it, until it smacked me in the face that we are behind the scenes, but we're like, I call it inside the scenes right now. So, um, what is it like to be on set for a shoot like this? Well, let's put you there and add the context of the final presentation, right? And it ended up just being kind of like a really cool effect. And you have to imagine what this is like in depth because for every shot, the 2D version is placed, pretty carefully in depth and convergence and not to conflict with the story, but to be a part of it. And I almost treat it like an object itself, like the 2D video frame floating there in the space. You have to treat it like that. You can't force the viewer to change their depth, that much from shot to shot, or from where the rest of the little trivia. This is the CEO of the company, of the
That's
robot
great.
company. Um, this is again in Nashville. So in the 2D version, we cleaned this up. We made this guy nicer. We did all the stuff we do, but no such luck in 16K. Um, yeah, so that's a little of that, and it's a really cool effect. It's really interesting. There's a lot happening, and we're all learning these lessons at the same time, which is like, how
So
fast can you cut?
what were the lessons that you learned doing
Yeah.
both the shoot as well as first of all, let's back up. You took the camera, you
Mhm.
had to be kind of stealthy about it. So you didn't have a big setup, right? You just kind of shot with what you could see with the camera.
Yeah. Let me share again. Um, so these are just a few BTS with the camera in the space. Um, Here we're in that office. I needed to get it's got this feeling of robot meets robot. Obviously, it's like they're very similar in their design spirit.
Right.
So that kind of thing. So yeah, I really you think it's hard to keep gear and stuff out of a 16 by 9 frame. Try,
Well,
keep it.
I spent 3 years doing 360 and
Oh
we
my
kept on
God.
going, oh, we need to go to 180 because this is like 360 is just like this insane process of all you have is a little shaft that goes down below. And that's, and then you have to figure out how you're going to build a mat to paint out the little bit of a triad orbit tripod or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, so to us, it's the 180 is luxurious, but I hear you. I mean, even just how do you cantilever the camera forward so you don't get the sticks, right?
Right, exactly. And you basically have to plan to the most important thing is honestly the edges because you've got these on both sides in the raw footage, you've got these big bulbous lenses that are now in your
Yeah.
frame. They're seeing each other. And so um Blackmagic has just this week improved the tools for your mask, your soft mask at the edge.
Right.
The tools were confounding for masking the edge of the frame, honestly. And they're improving it little by little, but
I
credit to Dan Sturm on my team for figuring out how to his own sort of like custom workflows like he always does to fix problems that aren't solvable yet.
I've gotten pretty aggressive about it. So I pull that in a lot in
Oh,
because I
good.
love the feeling of it fading into it. What happened was I didn't like some parts of the like the when we did when in some areas where Apple's done some not immersive, but they've taken a obviously a beam splitter and done bits and pieces like a Metallica of their face and so on and so
Mm,
forth.
mm,
What I didn't like was that it wasn't immersive. What I did like about it was that it felt like you were in a dream, like in this dark dream where it
mm,
just went
mm,
black. And
mm.
so one of the things that I've kind of gotten into is pulling that in pretty far,
Yeah,
and letting it just kind of just fade away rather than having
right.
this hard edge to the side of what you're doing.
I agree. A hard edge takes you out of it.
Yeah.
And like it's almost like the foveation that we impose with with a mat, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's you have to transition smoothly, but just the way our brain does. Our brain makes transitions always, so we can't do much with a hard mat.
Yeah.
So I'm getting I will be excited to see how people use the backside of the 180 with this environment track that
I, I've
that we
been,
can use.
yeah, I have the images to work on it. I just haven't had time to sit down and play with it. But one of the things that I'm trying to do is take like an Insta 360 and put it right where the camera was,
Yeah,
shoot a 360 and then try to blend between the two.
yeah.
To get that to kind of, it was funny about, oof, probably 8 or 9 years ago. I had this conversation. I was having dinner with a guy named John Carmack, and from Meta, and
Mhm.
John was talking about that. He was like, we have way too much information in the back. You don't need it. What we really should be doing is putting an image back there and then
Mhm.
blending the sides, through it. So you have the video on the front, but you still have the feeling like you're there and figuring out how. So what I've been trying to think about, and I've thought about it since that dinner. So it's
Yeah.
like, and the thing is, I've been trying to think about like how do you put architecture there so that when that transition has you're not trying to transition through trees. Like it's
Mhm.
like there's like an architectural piece that belongs there that would let you get from one to the other. So I have the pictures now, and it's just been one of those things of sitting down and running through it.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. We were on a call with Dave Hoffman at Black Magic, and we were talking about that as well because they're excited about that environment
Yeah,
space, the potential. And I had this idea, like just for every take, or for every shot, turn the camera 180,
that's it.
run
That's
off a
one better.
clip, and it's almost like the principle of wild sound on
Yeah,
a or room tone on a shoot, right? Before you move on, everybody shuts up for 30 seconds and you run off a clip, and then you fill it in for the atmosphere that it provides. And I think we could get into if this becomes practice of using that space back there. I think
well,
that's
it
you
can
might
do
see that.
more than just a sphere too. What's interesting is like what can we do with actual geometry and so on and so forth. Now I don't
Yeah.
think the problem is it has to be loaded into the headset. So how much geometry? Like I don't think you can throw a million polygons in there, but I think that you may be able to put in 500 polygons or 1,000. And one of the things
Yeah.
that we did at ILM was doing what was called originally it was called make sticky, but it
Mm.
became camera mapping. And the idea is to take a camera and project the textures onto something. So you can render something out you build something out that's really high res, and then you render it and then reproject it back onto the objects that are much lower, that are just holding the space, but they give you some dimension. And I think that
Yeah.
might be something interesting.
I just found a clip of something. So this was one of our earliest experiments, way before the Blackmagic camera. We basically worked with a theater group local to a community theater group in LA called Public Assembly. And they let us come and capture one of their shows at an outdoor theater environment that wasn't really a stage, but we were there capturing with side by side, stereo rig. And what we tried to do, this was with me setting up a Insta 360,
Yep.
capturing the space, and then we made these we these two in the foreground, you can see these chairs. Those are CG models reproducing the actual chairs in the environment. So we wanted to put the audience member in one of those chairs and then fill and use that as the back half of the space. And then what we didn't account for, which almost seems like a laughable error, is that we're outdoors. The light changes.
Yeah.
Daylight goes to night. And
Yeah.
so suddenly you're in a nighttime theater environment, and you're sitting in daylight. And it didn't work. It broke instantly. We're like, oh,
Well, that's the interesting thing about it, and why you just want to get the camera early, or any of these cameras early, is so much of it is just doing it, because there's going to
yeah.
be all the time. There's these like aha moments. Oh, right, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Or you run into things that are by accident. I was shooting some not was working with Radiant to shoot some 3D. I was using the immersive camera as well, but we were shooting some 3D with some little Blackmagic, the micro studios that were right next to each other. And it's by the way, if you're watching, it's hidden on my channel right now because people needed to see it. And I said, if I put it up publicly, people will see it. And they're like, oh, it's okay. So if you go to the YouTube/Alex Lindsay and you have a Meta headset, someone on a Meta headset wanted to look at it, because the thing with Apple Vision Pro is you just text people the footage.
Yeah.
Here's the footage. Here, just go watch it, and it's easy. Meta, not so much, not quite as easy to share.
No.
To take this down a rabbit hole for just a second, the getting stereo footage into YouTube is no trivial thing. I mean, it's easy now, but you have to download this like GitHub folder, drop the footage into the folder, run a script while it's in the folder, and you're just like, what am I doing here?
Python
And then
script. I don't want to touch
wait
Python
2
script.
hours for it to do whatever it's going to do for an 18-minute clip, and
Yeah.
then hope that it works. And it looks weird when it comes out. It's like none of the aspect ratios are right or whatever.
Yeah, it's the one that's
YouTube.
like a upside
Well,
down
just
U.
no,
Yeah.
it's just like squished together, but it's like this weird stretched out, and then you throw it into YouTube and it looks fine. So if you go, if you have a Meta headset and you want to see it, you can go to the YouTube page, and it's hidden there. But the interesting thing there was with 3D, this wasn't immersive, but with 3D, I didn't realize how much I would enjoy light flares in 3D. Like they're flaring out and they're coming. And I just didn't realize that when it goes from 2D to 3D, how much I would enjoy that. And now it's funny. I was at a concert. I saw the Oh Hellos earlier or last week, and I couldn't stop looking at the light flares, because now I'm obsessed with light flares. I was like, do they look that 3D in real life? And I was like, yeah.
You're spatial aware now.
I'm very spatial aware. And then the other thing that was really cool was the lasers. There's these lasers that come out, and it was like, oh, I didn't think that lasers were a design element that would look amazing in 3D, but man, they look like 3D. So,
oh, that's great. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, because they go off in different directions, and
parallax, turns out.
Parallax. It's so satisfying to look at caustics in 3D for some reason, and I don't even know if caustics do that for real in 3D. I remember I did one 3D commercial with beam splitter and red cameras early on in Sandwich for Jawbone, and it was mostly CG, and we made fake caustics, and we did it in stereo, and it was very satisfying for some reason.
Well, the interesting thing is that I think that one of the things that I've been playing with a lot is doing 3D for theatrical, and 3D for other things that are there. One of the things that people are noticing when we do the tests is that it looks amazing. Like they're like, I've never seen 3D like this. And part of the reason is because, number one, it's all optical. I'm doing tests. I don't have any budget for CG. So it's all just like what I could shoot. Number two, 60 frames a second. So 24, great for film if you're telling a story, not great for 3D at all. And there's so much of the framiness that 3D has that people don't like, that really comes from creating all those little 2D cards. So the mixture of cheating and 24 frames a second is why no one's going to 3D movies. And when you go to 60 frames a second at 60 frames a second at stereo optically without any effects, it's pretty cool. It looks pretty nifty. So anyway,
yeah.
So
I mean,
so other things that you learned from the the post? Like, how much noise reduction did you end up having to do? A lot of it's
Really,
outside. So you
no, I
probably,
mean, and it was kind of like get what I can. I had no control over the light, and there was like there was a shot inside the conference room where there was hardly any light, and you're doing your best to expose correctly. And we had, it's noisy as I just had to lift it up a lot in Resolve,
hmm
and did what I could. But I'm kind of like I'm okay with I'm okay with imperfection if it's the right imperfection.
right.
I like if it doesn't get in the way of the story, I'm okay with it. So I don't get technically obsessed with perfection because I think that can make you go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Curious,
absolutely.
Adam,
Yeah,
what ISO, or sorry, not what ISO, what compression ratio you went with for those experiments?
I think it's all 18 to 1, right? Isn't it what is it? What do they recommend? Like
They
I don't
recommend
even
12.
12. Okay,
12.
then that's
hmm
probably what we were at.
Yeah.
Whatever the camera is set at right now is what I shot it at.
Yeah.
I'm not a gear guy, you guys. So like this is what you need to know about me first is I'll learn the information and retain it if it lets me learn the tool, but then it's out of my head as soon as I move on to the next thing I have to figure out.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've done a bunch of tests with it of different ISOs, different, like, and it's kind of like one of those things like right now, shooting more than 12 or shooting less than 12 right now, 1 to 12 or 12 to 1, it's a lot of data. That's the big problem you get
Yeah,
into. You're just burning
right.
up a lot of data.
Mhm.
The but I think if someone paid me, I think I'd probably go to at least 8 to 1, if not 5 to 1. Like if it's in my head of like, why would I, like when I capture, on a Black Magic camera, I capture raw, like, and I usually capture a pretty low raw if I'm doing it for work. But if
Uh,
I'm doing it for fun, then I'm like, well, let's do Apple ProRes
yeah.
444 or whatever, or HQ. I'll go to Apple ProRes HQ 422, if I'm doing it for fun, but if
Uh,
I'm like, if there's money involved, I usually turn the gears up,
yeah.
So I think that's kind of how I looked at the camera right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to deliver
You just want
you
the
know,
room, you want the room to make the adjustments. I spend a lot of time in post having to deal with footage that people send me that I go, you know, for an extra $300, we wouldn't be, like of storage, like for an extra $300 of storage, this would be a whole different show, and so that's we had a question coming in from Kyle Hammond. Kyle asked, and this is a good question for both of you. Speaking of the Meta headset, is it worthwhile to own one as a starter or a test environment before I get an AVP?
I would ask a test environment or starter for what? For making the immersive films or for enjoying immersive films?
I'm guessing for making it, knowing Kyle.
Yeah. I
What
don't
do you
know.
think?
What do you think, Brenton?
I my co-founder's been begging me to pick up a Quest headset. We want to figure out how to support it. Speaking of, I'm about to go down the same nightmare of YouTube world. We have an artist that we're releasing on our app that she has a couple cover songs, and I don't want to deal with the publishing side of it. But those make perfect demos to be able to throw on a YouTube channel and kind of reach
Mhm.
the MetaQuest artist there. I think especially if you're starting with the Grow Pro tools, the Insta tools, like all the other like kind of like lower level like emerging cameras out there, the MetaQuest is going to take you absolutely as far as you need to go. They're really built for that form factor. They've been made for that form factor. If you find yourself with a URSA immersive camera, you probably have the money to do a Vision Pro, so that's probably where I would tell you to go,
Mhm.
since it's literally kind of designed around that form factor. But I mean, if you're just trying to dabble into storytelling, capturing, and and like getting neat things and putting them in an immersive environment, I mean, I would think a MetaQuest headset would take you pretty far.
It impresses me so much, the MetaQuest. And I was early DK1 Oculus user that I
DK2
got,
here.
yeah, DK2. I think I got every step of the Oculus cycle and, MetaQuest 1 and then skipped to 3. And now both my kids use them for games, mostly Gorilla Tag. And when I put it on, and like especially for testing purposes for theater, for what we're working on, it just impresses me. I think that they've done a pretty good job, and it is not as polished a product, of course. It's like they're not living by the same principles of human computer interactions that Apple is going to. That's pretty clear, but they're thoughtfully designing an environment for its purpose. And there's like little things. There's little UI things that are really nice, like how the windows will sort of drag with you and then ease out and into place, as you turn your head. There's a couple little things that are just as enjoyable or more as Vision OS. And so for that reason, I would say get a MetaQuest to introduce yourself to immersive space, to those languages that you need to know, because it's not just filmmaking. Immersive filmmaking is not just filmmaking, it's UX. It's a software language. That's what I think is so fascinating about this, is that it's not just cinema. It is cinema plus software. It's a new art form.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it is so much of life though is outside. Once you get out of the traditional cinema, which I think is going through its own figuring out what it's going to do next kind of mode, because I think that like I think that theaters, for instance, I think I spend a lot of time in theaters working, and I think theaters have a huge potential future. Theatrical release, not so sure. So anyway, so the so what they're using the theaters for, I'm not as bullish about what the theaters themselves. I think there's so many cool things that can be done because we want to do things together. But at the same time, I think that you're right in the sense of it's so important, because I think that we're getting very close to this uncanny valley when you put the headset on of it's getting close to feeling like it's real, and then I expect it to do things that I expect real things to do. Like
Right.
I expect, and as soon as it gets to that point, I want it to be that fluid. And there's something, but there's something magical, like with the Apple Vision Pro, this little thing where you go like this and you swing over and you get the little tools. I don't
Yeah.
know why I enjoy that so much. There's so
No, I
much,
know. Jose, my
something magic.
my co-founder in Sandwich Vision, he does this so much. Like he's working in the device, but he's constantly doing this, that now he finds himself checking the time by by doing this, even when he's not wearing the
Oh yeah,
the Vision Pro.
because it gets
Also,
me to it gets me, I'm always like, oh, I'll just do this and then I'll grab this, and
Yeah.
it just feels like, and I think Apple's done that much better. I mean, I've had the Oculus One, or whatever, that, and we were doing Oculus work, so we were doing tons. I was uh, doing tests back then, doing stuff, and back then it was 6 GoPros that were in like a little square and a 3D printed rig, and you had to go around and like try to make sure that they're all running and that they all somehow are synced. We do a big flash to make sure that they were all synced up, and
Yeah.
and the I think that from that point, we've really gotten to a point, and I think that the immersive camera combined with the Apple Vision Pro is the first time I felt like it's still hard, like it's still a lot of
Oh,
a lot
so
of
much
so
work.
a lot of data. I mean, I have an Ultra M3 Ultra that I got just for the camera,
Mm.
and it just sits there and runs, because it's just like, okay, now I turn on noise reduction and I will now wait 4 days.
Yeah, yeah.
For this five
yeah.
minute clip to render, and so we're still on that front edge. But I think that, I guess I would say that the footage that comes out of the immersive camera is so satisfying. Like, I've spent a lot of time using a lot of 3D rigs and cameras for 15 years, and it's just so much fun. And I think that, to your point, when you were able to just go out there and shoot it, I've definitely shot it where we've set up a bunch of monitors, got a bunch of setup and everything else. But what I think is magical is that I just grab this camera with a B mount battery and just run out and set it down and hit record, and I'm that's it. Like
And it does a magic trick, and it does it really, really
I
well.
mean, I wanted my daughter's in a band, and I wanted to record a little of the band, and I kid you not, was 120 seconds max from the time I pulled it out, opened the case,
Yeah.
to having it on the tripod and recording video, and just was really amazing.
Yeah, it's getting
Actually,
close. Go
What
ahead,
were you say,
Brendan.
Brenton?
oh no, yeah. Actually, I just did my first travel shoot with it, and by necessity, I couldn't find a tripod close enough to the location where we were shooting, and so I booked Southwest. The camera case is barely within carry-on spec.
Yep.
Flew Southwest, checked a larger bag that had a tripod with the head removed, like stuffed into it. A couple extra cables. Had my Apple Vision Pro laptop. A couple microphone accessories in my backpack. And then flew to Boston, and same thing. Rolled into the venue. About 10 minutes later, was all set up, and it was, I didn't need a ton of cases. I didn't need a ton of extra gear. It was really like, microphone, power supply. They supply an extension cord, tripod, and 2 memory cards.
Yeah.
And we were up and running. And it was. I have a shoot on Friday that's coming together super last minute, and it was like, like I kind of got this down to like a really small rollaway kit. That if I can do that and travel, then
Yeah, I would love to take it.
it's unbelievably easy relative to what we used to have to do.
I really want to take it. Good.
This is the case that I found that I highly recommend, and it fits in an overhead just barely, and it's got enough room for a couple of batteries, your charger if you want, a few accessories, and it's very, very travelable. And the only thing you have to do is get a luggage cart so it rolls around, because that thing is heavy. You do not want to be carrying that.
Cart Master.
Yeah.
I don't. If this is a little side note for everybody,
Okay.
Cart Master.
Cart Master.
It's expensive. I have
Okay.
traveled all over the world with a Cart Master, and once you have one, you will never go back to a rock and roller. It's $1,200 or $1,100 or something for a cart, but you can fold it and check it and it just folds up. It locks together. You put your tag on it, and off you go. And and I used to own about 5 of them for my company, and that's how we went everywhere with these Cart Masters. And it is anyway. If you
With a K, Cart Master with a K.
yeah,
Everybody.
Cart Master with a K. And I think they sell them at Film Tools or whatever, but they're maybe I don't know, but they are stunningly good. They fold up into almost nothing, then you unfold them, and Bob's your uncle. There was a Bob and an uncle. So anyway, but I think that I really want to take it overseas. I want to take it to Africa. Like that's I probably spent more time in different parts of Africa than anywhere else outside of the United States. And I just think about not just animals. Animals are fine, but there's so much art and dance and performance and things that you just don't see here. Like what we see in the news is very, obviously very cursatory and weird, compared to when you get there. And it's just some of the most amazing. I think of all these experiences I've had with Mbira artists and with, with dancers and everything else in Africa and Zimbabwe and Rwanda and Kenya and Tanzania. I'm just like, this would be just, this would be amazing. And right now, you could be the first one. I don't know if anybody else has an immersive camera in Africa right now. There's only a handful in the world at the moment. So anyway,
yeah, be the first. That would be amazing.
Now, Brenton, you have done your. It's not a soft launch anymore. It's a launch, right? For Front Row.
No, it's a launch. Yeah. Front Row came out about 3 weeks ago. At this point, we've been working on it in earnest, I guess, since early August, late July. Got into the App Store. I had this brilliant idea that we were going to go to this Apple event, and we were going to drop the app on like Monday or Tuesday, and then get to like talk about it. And we still did ultimately publish the app on the Wednesday of the event. But I definitely left and like talked to my co-founders. It's like, the next time I want to like release something while I'm at a conference and trying to like do work, like please talk me out of it.
Yeah, that sounds hard.
It was such a great idea in my head, and then I was just like, no, this is such an obviously busy time to do that. But it worked out. It worked out great.
You have to have deadlines, but I will say that I've released a lot of products in the last 25 years, and never have I looked back and thought I really needed to do it on that week that I pulled a bunch of all-nighters. I could have just said, you wanted to get to that point, but you want to get to the point where you're ready to go, and then just know that it's probably not going to make nearly as much difference unless you're like in a keynote, which I have had an issue with one of my products. Then you need to be done.
Well, but, and not for nothing, on that Wednesday, it was great to like anyone that I was meeting for the first time, chatting, like, what do you do? It was like, Front Row, like it launched today. And that felt really great. Like I was exhausted on Wednesday in a way that I, didn't love, but but it was nice because we were able to actually start talking about it in concrete terms. We were able to, tell our story, and kind of, get our story out there, what we're looking for, what we're working on next. And so, yeah, it was a lot nicer to just talk about things in concrete terms than just like, oh, it's coming, it's about to come out. And so yeah, I don't actually have any regrets, but I wouldn't repeat that choice again.
I like the magic piece, the magic dock a lot. It's very cool. And I
You are
forget, was
here.
it, what's that?
You are here.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Yeah, shout out to Nick Brazia, who put that together over the course of close to a year. He actually hosted. So there's a Vision Pro meetup group that is like kind of specialized in being obsessed with immersive video, um, and he actually did a presentation on I want to say like last Thursday. I'll dig the link out so that we can post it in the chat, and talked through his entire production process.
Hmm.
And I kid you not, it was at some of the similar level as what Apple was presenting at the conference the other week, like at a sheer creator level. He put together this really nice keynote of just like, here's what we did, here's what we learned, here's what we had to think about, here's what surprised us, here is how we thought about framing. And in the end, he spent close to 45 minutes, I think, just like walking through the creation of that. I'll also point out, because I'm not sure that many people, watching that for the first time know this, it was shot on R5C, and I think it's just about the best R5C footage that I've seen. It took a lot of processing to get there, and he's not, he got a lot of assistance from someone, so he doesn't talk super publicly about like his exact process. But I'd say, it's up there with like the Explore POV stuff and like some of the really, really, really sharp, incredible R5C footage where it's like, wow, it's like, I mean, if you put the time in, that footage that camera can produce stunning footage that is right up there with Apple Immersive. And honestly, I think at the frame rate, if you could push that to 90 and make it look natural, I think that camera would just really shine in most situations for people. It's
I do
great.
think the frame rate's important.
It's very important.
I think that's the thing. I mean, as someone I've worked in a lot of immersive, but also a lot of high frame rate, and we find that there's a lower brain thing that happens at about 96 frames. So we're getting close, but about 96 frames a second, something changes, and you think that it's real. Like it just, and so I'm really waiting as we start to see, the headset now, theoretically, the new one can get to 120. And that's the funny thing is that people talk about the headset being too expensive. And I was like, minimum viable product. Like that is as cheap as they could make it to do the thing that it does. Like, like it's not gonna, like, like there's no way they could make it any less than that. And we're not, we as Apple Vision Pro users, I think we're not consumers. We're like the gamma testers, and we're willing to put money down to say we're serious about wanting to gamma test it. But I think that's the mistake. People think like it's a consumer product and no one wants to use it. And I'm like, there's a bunch of us that are pretty happy, but I think that I'm really interested to see the next version of this camera combined with the new release of the headset, if we get to 120 frames a second, because I think that people are going to find that 100 frames, 120 frames per second with the resolution all the way up, which is going to be a huge engineering problem for Apple. But at 8K per eye, 120 frames a second, I think that it's not going to look like anything that people have seen before. And I don't know if the current headset can do that. Like I even the new one, I don't know if it can get to that resolution and frame rate, but I think that if it can, and I think that foveated rendering is a big piece of that. The foveation. I think that they talked a little bit about that during the immersive, but that's a pretty big deal. And this is more acuity in the center of what we're looking at than the edges for those listening. So the foveation means that it's going to be sharper. You're going to have more acuity. It's funny. They were talking about this in the immersive event, that there's, you can't really talk about resolution. You really talk about acuity, the perceived sharpness of what you're looking at, because it's just an entirely different world, that you're in. And I think that that's going to be, really interesting as we start to see how that gets kind of worked through. Now, Brenton, being there, did you learn anything else that you think would be useful?
My God, yeah, that second day was everything that I was looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the one of the most exciting things that they finally presented was the idea of static foveation at the encoding level. Like, I think we all we all instinctively, we got our Blackmagic cameras, we did our export tests, we did a bunch of shoots, played with ISO, played with sharpening. And it always felt like it was just, by the time it got encoded for us to view in a streaming format, it just still wasn't like quite that Apple magic. And
Yeah.
so them finally presenting like, oh, and there's this like other kind of secret sauce that's really, really key. It was kind of like, it's like, man, it'd been nice to like tease that at WWDC, so that we at least kind of had that in the back of our minds as these cameras are getting shipped. But it was nice to talk about. I was lucky enough to do one of the one-on-one sessions with the Apple finishing and coloring team. And they really, emphasize like it's going to be a really big deal when you guys get your hands on these tools. I know Spatial Gen are starting to work through some beta tests with that. I know Apple announced that ColorFront was going to be a partner that was going to be capable of getting that implemented into NVHEVC. So I'm excited to see what that does for the camera more than anything. Outside of
Can you
that,
explain it
oh
just
yeah,
for
sorry.
those of us who don't like I wasn't at the event and I didn't read the materials after, but I'd love to know more about static foveation.
Yeah, I'll chat for a little bit, Alex, while you see if you can maybe find the graphic that they had for that. If not, I can pull it up and
I'll
when we get off me.
try. You might know where it is
So
better, faster
yeah,
than
so
me, but
the idea is that the idea with dynamic foveation, right, is like this idea that as you're looking
Mhm.
around, the sharpest pixels are kind of in the center, and it's doing this kind of fuzzy stuff off to the side. We all see that when we infuriatingly have to submit screenshots for our app
Yeah, sure.
submissions. So the idea of static foveation is so you get your ProRes master, you've exported it, everything is really crystal sharp. They kind of apply some of that same logic, but to pixel density across the frame. And Apple said that they do this dynamically, but the general idea for something that's like very center heavy is that instead of having even numbers of pixel density all the way out to the edges, you have additional pixel density that is available in the center of the frame where your subject matter is, and then it slowly kind of gets lower as you get to the edges. So
Hmm.
I think you can really see this in their older stuff. If you like pull up Alicia Keys after you have some of that knowledge, you look, she is just razor sharp, and there's all this pixel information, and there's all this encoding data that's like right here in front of you. And then as you get to the edges, like it starts to fall off, and I think in some of the older stuff, it ends up being a little bit blurry. I think as you get to the more modern stuff, they've obviously got better at that encoding pipeline, and you can see the results of that. And so it's especially if you're submitting your 8K master into your HLS, encoding pipeline, that's going to be an enormous difference because it just has all this data, and you're just really giving a lot of attention to the pixel density of like these areas right here, but you ultimately still have this total same number of pixels. I think, am I getting that right, Alex, from your understanding from
yeah,
from that
yeah,
conference?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So it's and I think that this is going to make a big yeah, it's going to make a big difference in again, the hard part is we're kind of going back. I feel like it's going back to all the compression issues that we had in the past where, we started it always feels like we keep on resetting back to 320 by 240. It's kind of like, when I remember seeing a 320 by 240 video and just going, I could just immediately see the end of film. Like when I saw it, I was like, I could just see the trajectory that's where, film it was like, we're done with that. And I was just waiting then for a decade, for it to get closer. But, and I feel like when we look at this, but it's the same problem. You keep on going back to, we don't have enough bandwidth. We don't have enough processing power. We don't have enough, we just keep resetting, and so I think that in the same way, a lot of the stuff is going to make it look and feel better, but I think that it is, we're still making compromises because what we're talking about is really hard.
We're always pushing the envelope. We always pushing the edges of the tech, and it's as true now as it was when DV was first, released, in the early Sony cameras, and when Panasonic came out with the HVX, and we were always right there thinking this is we almost did it, right? Digital replaces film now with the HVX, and then we
Yeah.
push the boundaries of that, and we're always just gonna and like there's we will look back at this AIV 16K 10 years from now, and we'll kind of chuckle at ourselves.
Well, and they have, I mean, there's headsets that are floating around in labs that are, you know, 12K per eye, 120 frames a second or more,
Mm.
240 frames a second. And they, you know, so I think that there's a lot still, there's so much more that we still have to go. Like people think, oh, this is too much. It's not too much. Like you just have no
We're
idea.
just getting started.
We're just getting started.
Mm.
Like this is minimum viable product at the moment, you know, and
Yeah.
I think that, and I think that's the hard part is that I think that when you look at people get excited about something being cheaper, but I don't, I think it's so great. I mean, I'm just very excited that Apple has been willing to like do what's necessary to have us think about content that's at a higher resolution. Because whatever the headset can do is what everyone kind of builds towards. You know, when I worked on Star Wars, we had, you know, we rendered to the third generation of the film. So the resolution that we rendered to was, what does this look like? Can we tell the difference between not the master, but the third generation, which is what theaters are going to see? Because we were dealing with how much time is it going to take to render? You know,
Mm.
like I had this big shiny queen ship that I was rendering every day. And you know, the budget is you're trying to stay inside of 45 minutes a frame. Like that's the kind of visual effects just lives in a 45-minute a frame world,
Mhm.
right? When you see it get better, it just means that we did more for 45 minutes of frame. Like that's just how that's how much it costs to render. And so, but we made it because that's what but when you go now and look at Star Wars Episode 1 or The Matrix, if you ever watch a 4K of The Matrix, you can see where the film is and where the effects are, because it's like really, really
Mm.
sharp and then flat and
Mm.
soft and then sharp and then soft and then sharp and then, because they rendered to what is the minimum viable frame, you know. And the problem with that is that now we're stuck with The Matrix being soft forever, because that was what we, you know, like there's no, you know, maybe someday someone will go back and use AI to upres those effects shots or whatever, but it hasn't happened yet.
Mm.
And all this VR content that we're creating is all shot for whatever we think the headset can do. And so Apple building a bigger headset is so important for us to be building better content. You know, like it's, you know, otherwise we keep on making things that are minimum viable for the Meta, you know, which, I mean, I think that Meta was way out ahead and they potentially could still do something great, but I think that it will be hard when you're not making your own chips to
Mm.
Yeah.
to keep up with the headset.
Alex, I have that screen share.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're
yeah,
able
yeah.
to
Let's show.
send
Yeah.
that, I think it
Oh,
does a
there we
much
go.
better job of like kind of explaining this idea visually. So, you know, on the left side here, we have, you know, if you know, well, this is kind of what's happening, I guess, to all the Cine Immersive owners right now is when we export, you know, we process this for streaming. The pixel density is applied evenly across the entire frame, and so it's this idea of you know, the we get this foveated encoding that is able to apply the pixel density differently. This actually, what was fun about watching this was it finally validated Mike Swanson's original blog for anybody that had been, you know, following him trying to understand like what is this Apple immersive video, you know, format. He knew that it wasn't frame packed in a way that was common, and there wasn't like an easy radial like mathematic way to break it down. But he couldn't quite put his finger on it. It was actually fun. I ran into Mike Swanson. We've talked for years on Zoom, and I ran into him a little bit after this. He ran into someone. They mentioned my name. He's like, "Oh, Brenton's here. Like we've never met." So we chatted. I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I was just thinking of you. Like, you know, here it is. Like, you know, this, you know, your original blog where I first like, you know, read about your work and you trying to break down this format." He was right. I mean, it essentially like it was exactly what he put down on paper. He just didn't quite have the math for it. So yeah, I'm excited. We're participating in the beta, some of the beta testing for static foveated rendering for our HLS streaming. And so I finally get to see this firsthand and see exactly, you know, what is the overall quality impact. And I mean, from the way that the guys who literally, you know, their job is to press the export button for the very final copy that's going to get put on the Apple TV store for, you know, the different Vision Pro content that Apple is producing. They felt like this is a pretty enormous tool that they've, you know, unfortunately just kind of had to keep under wraps until they kind of had everything set up in a way that there was an SDK to be able to embrace this.
I have to say one thing that I was left with going to the event was that, you know, you think you have your qualms about whatever the content is that Apple, you know, has put out, like some of the stuff you like and some of the stuff you don't like and everything else. But what you really get clear of when you talk to anyone that's been shooting with that camera, or anyone on the teams that have been shooting with that camera, is, wow, do they know a lot about it?
Yeah.
Like there's like they thought about it really hard, and thought about, like there's not a lot you're thinking about that they're going, oh right, that's a good idea. We never thought of that. Like not so much, and so all the decisions so far have been pretty conscious decisions of this is what the product, and I do think you see that in the camera. We talked about this before. I think you see the Apple fingerprints all over the camera on just little things about how it works and how it ties in and everything else that because they're the ones using it, the most. Have you guys had a chance to see the aircraft the military the Veterans Day release yet?
Ah,
No,
I
not yet.
downloaded it today,
I
and
know
I
I
didn't
have it
quite make
down. I
it.
was so busy today. I had to ship out all this stuff today for something else, and
We'll
I
have
was
something
like,
to talk about in December. Then.
yeah. So December we'll talk about any of the new releases. What I think we need to start going by and like talking about really, like any new content. Like obviously we got to talk to Adam about the commercial, and now Brenton, you've been shooting a couple of new things as well?
Yeah, I'm sitting on 7 to 8 hours, which is starting to feel like more and more intimidating as I just like look at these timelines and see these exports. We released this piece by a local blues musician, Marquise Knox. It's a 10-minute just him jamming on the blues. What's fun is that ultimately I think that's going to end up being about a 40-minute piece, split up into probably 2 or 3 segments. And you'll get a fun. He's a great storyteller. He toured around with ZZ Top, but it's definitely, you know, it's hard for me as a creator because as I'm getting further and further into shooting and understanding the camera, I'm having to start with releasing what I feel is it's just definitely some of our early work. It's some of our early work from a shooting perspective. It's some of our early work from a sound design perspective. It's some of our shooting work from a from a post-production perspective. So the stuff I'm really, really excited about is stuff that I'm like not ready, quite ready to talk about. We got to shoot a music festival that happened a couple weeks ago that I'm hoping we end up with probably 4 performances that we'll release bits and pieces of. One of them we're trying to do a larger documentary piece and split that content up. We got to shoot some tests with TEDx that are probably not going to make it onto the app, at least not in their entirety. But we shot a lot of behind the scenes, and we definitely kind of wrote the script for, okay, this is what we need to do differently next time, and this is how we should approach it. And then we have a couple asks out there for some different local shows, some different national shows. And then I'll be shooting some stand-up comedy this Friday. We'll see how much or which pieces of it actually make it into the show. But a lot of people are wanting to understand the format a little bit more. They're wanting to see their individualized niche in the headset. And so, honestly, a lot of my job lately has also just been going out and shooting very specific kinds of content so that I have examples of like, what does architecture look like in the headset? What does tourism like from a locality, St. Louis perspective look like in the headset, and really just kind of keep building out the demo reel. We obviously have I think 8 stand-up specials on the platform right now, but those are all R5C. So we want that immersive video one in, because when you see it, like Apple immersive video it's a different wow factor. So yeah, we're excited. We're getting close to a point where we can easily release one piece of content every week for, the next foreseeable several months. We have an episode 2 that's a follow-up to You Are Here, the Magic special. I know Nick is super excited to get that out, so that's probably going to drop sometime in December. And then I think once we get rolling, I'm hoping to do like an immersive Mondays thing so that we can keep a steady stream of content. But the fun thing about being an early adapter of Apple Immersive Video and the DaVinci workflows is that we're also discovering different bugs as we progress through that process.
You said you were talking before the show that we had a little bit of a bug with the.
Yeah. I'd been getting really frustrated because we had this like very solid release plan. I had all this content lined up. We had most of it pre-segmented. And so for us, it was really, to your point, it was just press and go and waiting 4 days at a time. But most of the stuff was already, kind of formatted for us to get it out the door. And we were lucky that the first pieces of content that we put out had relatively few problems. I think it was probably one of the first ASAF, Apple Spatial Audio Format customers on spatial gen, and so I had to do a little bit of metadata hopping around to get that to flowing cleanly. We discovered there's a metadata bug on DaVinci 20.2.1 in terms of how their system was interpreting it. So once we upgraded, that was gone. And then we just got stuck, and I couldn't isolate it, and the files generally looked the same. And what we finally discovered is that without a whole lot of logic or patterns that we can find right now, sometimes when we're doing AIVU files, the AMI file, which has all the camera metadata wrapped into it. So it's really, really important. Otherwise, like if you don't have that, it does not play back. The headset does not like it. Is just missing from some of our exports. Identical, machines, identical process. We're using
Right.
Blackmagic Cloud. So even to that point, the projects are the same. But yeah, it was excuse me. It was super frustrating. We're glad that we figured it out because now we can just do ProRes exports. But yeah, it's been a bit of an uphill battle. Excuse me.
Now, Adam, what do you think is your next thing you're going to be shooting?
Oh, good question. So we're always out there shooting. We've gotten to do a couple of shoots with JPL, which was really fun because we have a
Wow. What
good.
are you shooting with? Can you say what you're shooting with JPL? It's
Oh
like one of my
yeah,
favorite
I
things
can
in the
say.
world.
I would love to even show
Rockets.
like a little tease, but they did so there's a creative studio within JPL called The Studio, and they're tasked with the creative storytelling and visualization of what cool stuff JPL is working on. And um so they have what's called the Mars Yard. And the Mars Yard
I don't care
is
what. It's got to be cool.
it
Is it?
is cool. It's terrain that's like basically mapped out to look like the surface of Mars. And then one day, and this is a very rare event, but they bring all of the roboticists they bring every single rover out, every
And
robot
test
that
them.
they've yeah, and they test them
That's
and they
cool.
drive them around. And so we got to bring our camera out
That's going to be
for that
awesome.
day. We shot, so that was incredible. Like, and this is how I like to describe that. And I wish I could share the clip. It's JPL is going through some stuff, but um there's the famous, Lumiere brothers
Yep.
train coming towards the camera. And it was shocking at the time. It was a shocked audiences. People fainted because they weren't used to that. They weren't accustomed to that feeling of realism. And so the effect of we set the camera up at eye level and the biggest Mars rover slowly driving toward you. And it is
Same.
spectacular.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
So there's that. We did some interviews with people at JPL, which were fun. We're out there shooting little short form docs.
Hmm.
We've done, and with what we're building, theater, which is the theater app and a content platform. It's not just about Apple Immersive Video. We are, because we're a creative studio and production studio, we're shooting that stuff. But a lot of it is layered immersive media. So like that can mean other formats. So we've done some cool partnerships with performers or directors of films, where they are supplementing the content of their film with a layered version of their commentary. And it's easy to describe. The effect is pretty astounding, but imagine sitting in a movie theater watching the film on the big screen, and you turn to your right and the director is there talking about the film next to you. And
Yeah. I
it's just that's the potential of this format.
I definitely think that's so interesting to have. You know, this idea of having the director's commentary connected to, like, you're sitting in the room, you're looking at a monitor almost of that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in with them. I just think that's going to be a really interesting format.
I agree. There's so much story around the story. People are fascinated by storytelling and the process of storytelling. And like, talk about enriching the content that all these studios are spending so much money and getting so much, to get eyeballs on. If you can tell stories around those stories,
Yeah.
then that is a
I
market in and of itself.
I feel like there's so, like, this is where I think that Apple has so much unspent potential. And
Mm,
I don't know when they're going to turn that on, but when you look at MLS and you look at F1, I mean, the idea of putting a camera in an F1 pit,
mm.
might be cool. you know,
Yeah.
it's not like trying to put it on the. Everyone's like, well, how are they going to put it on the car? I'm like, I don't know if they need to. Like, just put it in the pit, put it in a couple places. There's some cool places to see things, but I also think that um, all of this behind the scenes, being able to have, like, when I saw what you did in the ad in Nashville, I was thinking about Silo. Like, wouldn't it be cool to see the clip in Silo and see it being shot, and have it sitting over here. I can look over at it, but I, and see it in there. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's the principle is the reason why what you are building, Alex, which is there's something special about that space of the theater. There's some maybe
yeah.
it's not forever going to be for displaying movies on the big screen. Maybe it's for something else, but there's something about that space. It's a temple to the experience, and so we gotta honor that.
Well, I think that the thing is that people want to be around each other. Like,
Hmm.
what's funny is I don't watch concerts, even in the headset that much. Like, I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, how can I watch a whole concert in a headset? I've watched and I've watched a couple of them, and now, like, with some of the stuff that Brenton shot, and with the stuff that I shot recently, I found myself watching the whole thing because it's the framing's working and the immersive's working and everything else. But then I went to a show, soon after that, to this band called the Oh Hellos, which turned out to be just amazing. And they and I realized the power of everyone being in the room, and I think that that's what the theater has to do. And I think that people still want to be around each other.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I don't want to be around people when I'm watching a movie. I want everyone to be quiet.
Yeah.
Like, I want to, I want at most my family. Like, like, that's about as many people as I need. 4 people in the room is as big as this needs to get, and we have a way of doing it. And everyone knows when they can make noise and when they can't make noise, and not
Mhm.
mostly not, like, and, we pop really, really high end popcorn. I'm very good at that. And I have my Manhattan typically if I'm going to watch something.
Yeah.
And I I think that there's a huge opportunity for for theatrical to be something else, to go to a theater and enjoy an experience. But I think that there's a mismatch between a mashup between getting experiences in the headset and then going and experiencing with other people. And I think that those things, there's so much, like, I would love to go to the movies and see something and then watch all, like, dig into how it got made, or when eventually these cameras can go live, I'd love to sit on a set with someone making a film,
Mhm.
like I'm sitting in a director's chair, and just sitting there asking questions like, what about this? Why are you doing that over there? Like, what's going on over
Yeah.
there? And
You know, I was going to ask you guys about, do you know anything or do you know anything about the new feature of the Apple Immersive utility that's live monitoring? Because like it's a little camera icon, and the feature says the way it's described in the release notes is live monitor your immersive camera. No further details. So
it is funny. We're so early on in this technology that it is
Mhm.
like there's just pieces that aren't finished. Like, it's like you just get to the wall and it's like the
Yeah,
wall isn't. It's like, oh wait, that's just void.
right.
Like, there's brick void. And
Yeah.
so, and because we're still early in it, and there's it's hard to tell. It's hard to read the tea leaves when you look at the press releases as to whether this camera will do live or whether the next camera does live. Like, it's when you look at it, they talked
Very
about
obtuse.
a live activation camera, and you don't know which one is which.
Yeah.
And the right now you could take SDI out of the camera and run it into something like Touch Designer and potentially build a live feed with it at the moment, just with Touch Designer. Like, so it can be done. Now, it wouldn't be the same resolution, but as a preview, it potentially could be cool. And
Yeah.
if you look at the 1 gig out of the back of the camera, that is enough to pump out at least 12 to 1. So, like,
Yeah.
the camera's got all the pieces. You just don't know. Obviously, we know it's hard. So,
Yeah, well, live monitoring from Resolve is is a good experience when you've got it working. It's a clean, good experience, and
Yeah,
you've
I
got your
was.
your Mac Virtual Display in there with you, so you're working on your post and you're living in it, right?
yeah,
You're seeing you're seeing the results in real time, and I think the translation of from that to live from the camera, if they've got that locked in, or if they're about to,
yeah,
then that's going to be very exciting. And I think I was just, I think in terms of, wanting to be on set with people making a film, shooting something, we all have this understanding that where the filmmakers sit is like in the folding chairs and they're pointing and they're making notes. They have their iPads or whatever it is. I think the next era of people literally wearing the Vision Pro while they're shooting is going to be upon us pretty soon, and
Yeah.
we'll have this understanding that that's what happens when you're doing this.
Yeah,
And I do think
John,
it's, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say John Chu famously talked quite a bit about this when he was shooting Wicked.
Mhm.
That at the end of the day, he would watch all of his dailies on an Apple Vision Pro, and
Yeah.
that was like a big process of him making sure that he got everything and basically being able to, anywhere he was, he could sit in a theater at home and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
watch what they had accomplished that day.
The funny thing is that as someone who spends a lot of time in theaters, because that's what I do, the Vision Pro is sharper. Like it's a
Yeah.
sharper experience. Like if you get, well, what I would say is it's sharper for films that are shot with really good film stock. So
Mhm.
if you're watching, obviously it made for IMAX, even if it's not an IMAX experience, it's a regular widescreen experience. The fact that they use that film stock, Tenet, um, Oppenheimer, those you can the difference is in the Vision Pro, you can see the film stock. Like you can understand, like the original Born Identity. It's a good movie. I really like the Born Identity. Film stock's not that good.
Mhm.
Like it's like like you're like like and so like but you didn't notice it on TV and you didn't notice it in the film. I mean in the theater, but you do. I notice it at least in the headset. So
If I could back up for a second, actually, as you were talking about the Apple Immersive Video Utility and release notes, I think it would behoove Vision Pro owners who are editing immersive video in headset in DaVinci to know the new updated version it's definitely making my job a little bit harder. So
Mhm.
they've released an update. I unfortunately had my headset on auto update and I've disabled it since then. I'm going to see if I can roll it back. And while it does seem like it does a better job sometimes at the consistency with the connection at the headset, the thing that it does now that is really infuriating when you're working in DaVinci is if it disconnects, it shuts off the entire feed. And previously,
Mhm.
what it would do is if you were in the headset and it disconnected silently in the background, you would just lose it for a second, and then you could scrub a frame, see, and then eventually it would probably catch up, and you kind of keep going about your business. The problem is now is that so when it loses a connection, it leaves entirely, and then the Apple Immersive Video app just appears wherever you happen to be looking when it closed,
Mhm.
and then there's a button you have to interact with to start streaming that feed back into the headset. And so it's this interaction need that has created this like very frustrating workflow at this point where it's like I think in the past if when it disconnected it's buggy but like when it works it's amazing and it's borderline magical. Now every single time it disconnects it requires a user interaction in the headset, and it's really made things hard. So I would say anybody who's working with immersive video, and they do not have this new start streaming experience popping up in their headset, definitely disable your apps from auto updating and hold on for a little bit until they kind of figure that out. Because that additional step of user interaction for me most of the time means like I have to move a DaVinci window, like a remote window, click start streaming, it pops up, go back where I want, do my things, and yeah, you can definitely kind of feel around the fringes where we're still kind of working with beta versions of some of these software, and it's just not a great post production experience right now.
and the joy is that we're the only ones that get to do it right now. Like I've been,
Yeah,
I mean, what I mean is it's exciting to be in
it
the
is.
front area where like a lot of people get to work on products when there's a big paved road and there's lights and there's the cat eyes are going down the thing, and we get to go in when there's no road and we have a machete and we have to get from one place to the other. And I think that some people like that. I love it. That's like my happy place is places where there's not a lot of roads yet. And so I think that the current process is rough, but that means that there's not a lot of people and we get to experiment. And
Well, and oh my God, like the improvement from just 6 months ago of like,
well, and that's the whole thing is
like
that, and I think, and now that people have it, there's a lot more feedback and it's being used a lot
exactly.
more, and there's, so a lot more people are seeing it. And I have to admit, if I wasn't so busy, I would, almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I did a wedding with Ozos. I took
Mm.
3 Nokia Ozos and did a wedding with it for a venture capitalist who was investing in this. So she wanted it in her wedding. And so we did that, and we used thetas, and we had a dome in the yard where people could watch the stuff, that evening, which I thought
Mm.
no one would be interested in, but it's a 45-minute line the whole night. Like, people just
Mhm.
loved looking at this. And she said, if you ever, like, she said, you should do weddings. Like, she saw it, and she was like, you should do this all the time. And I was like, I can't. Like, at the time, my Pixel Core at the time, if I couldn't bid on any, we didn't have the infrastructure to bid on anything less than $50,000 a unit. Like, I couldn't, like, I can't take anything on. I can't move the warehouse to do less than that. And so I was like, I can't do weddings because I can't charge that much for a wedding. But I will say, with this camera, I've thought about, man, I bet you I could do $4,000 a wedding right now and just show up with that camera. The post, I have to figure out the post. And I bet you there's enough people, at least in the Bay Area, that would keep me busy every Saturday.
Yeah, our
Like,
head of post at Sandwich got married a couple weekends ago in Santa Cruz, and I wanted to have the camera with me so bad because I think of anybody would have
yeah.
enjoyed having that
He was like, no,
record.
don't do the weird thing.
Well, I just it would have made it into a deal. If you're there with a big piece of gear, then it's a deal, and I wanted to enjoy myself.
See, I am so bad at enjoying myself at things. I, I love, like, I go to things because I've been doing events for, closing on 40 years, and so when I go to an event, all I want to do is figure out where do I pick things up and work on things, because I'm very uncomfortable just sitting there. Like, I'm not good
Yeah,
at the sitting and the doing thing. I'm really good at, like, whatever there is to be,
having something to do. Yeah.
having something to do while I'm there, and not not be stuck in talking to people. So I kind of hide behind camera. I've been hiding behind cameras since I was about 15 years old. So I find that, the idea of going to a wedding, I definitely I'm looking for an excuse to try to do that, because I think that, again, I don't think you boil the ocean with that, but I think you could make a solid living doing. And I'd say this as someone in another life, I DJ'd weddings. Like, that's how I paid for my graphics habit. While I was learning how to do graphics and I was completely useless, I did 3 to 4 weddings a weekend, as a
Wow.
DJ. And so every weekend, like, and so I look back on that going, I could be doing 2 or 3, you could be making 10,000 a week, I think, doing weddings with this
Mm.
product. Like, I think that, and it would just be it would just be that camera. Like, you're not multi-camera, not anything else. We're just going to capture all the things that are there. I think someone's going to get that done. I don't know who that's going to be, but
Mm.
someone the camera will sit there for a little too long, and they'll have a friend who asks for it, and then they'll do it, and then they'll be like, oh, I should do this more often. Anyway,
Adam, that kind of brings up a good question. Do you have any multicam shoots planned at this point, or what's been your approach when you're thinking about which projects you could take on and which projects you are like, it's like I need more coverage for that to make that work?
Yeah, we do know a couple of people in our category who have done some big shoots, like some of the Apple stuff, and there are a couple of leads on projects that we feel like are going to be going that we wouldn't want to just have one camera there, and so we'll partner up. And I think that's what all of us need to do right now. We need to be each other's support system, I think.
yeah, yeah. I feel like there's
Um,
almost like we need to have a map, figure out the map
yeah.
of who's got what where, to do that. For me, most of my vision around it is, I did a bunch of multicam with 360. I'm really focused on trying to get a really great single frame. Like, in the headset, I don't like to move around that much. Like, I
Mhm.
kind of, I understand why we do it when we have a really big venue, but I kind of want to build a venue around. Brenton has to listen to me say this every single time we talk about cameras. Is I
No, we talk
really want
extensively.
to
It's a great idea. Yeah.
I really want to build a venue around the camera. Like, I'm just obsessed with this idea that you have, if you have this here, what is, if you have the camera, you've got, the 8 to 16 feet is really the most important at about 120 degrees, right? So this is the window that I want to put things in, but I want to
Mhm.
have everything else around it. If you look a little this way or you look a little that way, it's just gorgeous, and it has dimension. There's, like, it's got, the place wants to have rafters or lights or whatever so that it creates the parallax and does all the things. But then you put a band in there, and I don't think you can fit every band in there, but a 5 or 6 piece band, rock band or whatever band you want is in there. But the idea is that you're sitting in the absolute perfect, the most gorgeous space in the absolute perfect place for a band to play music for you. To
Yeah,
me,
I
that's
love it. I
so
love
that's
it.
that's the dream. I don't know about
We met with a filmmaker today. He came over here and because he had emailed and pitched his, or actually, do you guys know Paul at Acute Immersive?
Oh yeah, of course.
Paul Mezia? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He
Paul and Anthony.
introduced, yeah, Paul and Anthony. They introduced this filmmaker, Tristan, to us, and he's working on developing a short film script, a short immersive film script. And the concept is really strong, to make something uh, really like high bar, get some name talent, comedy, and purpose crafted for this format. And so what we're talking about is building a set. And we're like building a set for this camera specifically is a whole different opportunity.
Yeah.
You're working with different geometry and different value systems that you need to play to the camera. And so we started this was all unexpected, but we started to get into what previs opportunities are there to, like, before you spend the money and construct a set, what can you previs in your Unreal or Blender and and model the camera with these specific optics so that you know and then render it to your device so you know what it's going to be like in the space. I feel like that's an exciting opportunity for the tool users.
I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
previs available for everything in the headset, and especially, I think that there's some exciting things around, Unreal specifically, potentially Unity, but I think Unity's having a little, a little falling a little behind. But I think that inside of Unreal, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of previs. I think
Yeah.
that's exciting for everything, for real estate, for filmmaking, for immersive filmmaking, for everything. It just feels like that's still an untapped. We keep on thinking that it's going to happen, but it just hasn't turned around yet. Yeah, go ahead, Brenton.
Now, as I say, I thought that was a really effective part at the Apple conference when the director of The Weeknd, who directed the Open Hearts music video, he talked extensively about how important previs was in his entire process, and it definitely after walking into that, with the camera into several different music venues and be able to like just plop it down and just kind of have to figure out on the fly. I definitely left that conference like, man, it's like I really want to like be able to try to do the way, just as much more previs as I can on every single thing. We have a documentary that we're working on right now that we'll shoot in January. But we all, luckily it's something that's kind of local, so it's easy for us to just go and set up shop and do some test shoots. But I really push the guys. It's like if we can just show up with the camera and go to the place where we want to shoot this and like with the lighting and everything, like let's just put up the camera so that by the time that we do this in January, we can just know exactly what we're going to get, what the problems are, and already kind of have solutions for them. I think that's it seemed like that was a keynote presentation that resonated with everybody of just like, man, yeah, it's like the more that we can, storyboard this or plan this out or use tools like Unity, it's also ultimately going to save you time and money or save you from making mistakes. Mistakes in this format are just so expensive. So it's an unbelievably, just the problems you run into are just unbelievably higher and surprising sometimes.
It's a funny thing. I started in previs. I mean, so that was my first job in the film industry was doing previs at Lucasfilm for Star Wars, and the pod race when we finished the first version of the pod race, it was 22 minutes long, and it ended up being about 7.5 minutes long, and the 11-minute version's the best. They cut a little too much out, but and you started in previs as well, Adam. You said you.
Yeah, I worked for a couple of directors who owned a visual effects company in Santa Monica, and they would direct commercials they would direct commercials. They ended up being feature directors too, but because they owned an effects company, even for the smallest jobs like a laundry detergent, they would previs every single shot. And so I was on set with my Power Mac or my PowerBook, taking I would come to set with the previs cut, which I had cut at the studio, and then I would have a feed from the video tap, and I would just like in Final Cut on my
Just cut them
laptop, I
all
would
in.
just I would drop in every shot to replace the previs, and that was the process. And
Yeah.
so there were some big commercials that would show up where the real editor would get paid to just basically like overcut my previs. That was it.
And
Yeah.
you can cut to that, and it's so yeah. I mean, that's exactly for us. We spent months and months and months working on it, but it saves so much time. And I've taken that forward where almost every shoot, like I have a little lidar camera called a BLK 360, and it's this little camera. It's like, but it shoots million points a second, and
Wow.
and so I always tell people when I go to a venue that I got to shoot, I was like, can I take a couple photos? I got a little 360 camera that I just want to take some photos for reference. And they're like, sure. They don't realize that I set it down. They're like, wow, that little thing is spinning really fast. And I'm like, yeah, it's gathering some 3D information. Well, so I learned not to say LiDAR because then people say no. So the, so I just go, I'm just taking some 360 photos and it just, but the thing is that now you have plus or minus a couple millimeters of the data around you, and then we take that back into SketchUp or into Vectorworks or SolidWorks or whatever, and you build it all out. And I think that that's going to be really useful for the headset too, because we used to do this for the Ozos, where we build that 3D model out, and then you put the headset on, and you look around, and you go, oh, this is going to be good, or this is not going to be good, and you really want to, especially when the budgets start. It's funny when you really need it the most is when you're not having it, you don't have any money and you can't afford to waste any money. So really small ones, but that's when they use it the least. like, like let's just go and shoot and do the best we can. And the previs makes such a huge difference in the overall. You just end up with, the thing is that a lot of times if you shoot well, the previs makes sure that you walk away with all the stuff you wanted. And then you have an extra three hours to do a bunch of fun stuff because if you scheduled it well. So, but yeah, I think that's going to be, I think the headset again is going to be huge for that. But there's so many things, and I guess I feel like, and what's great about I've had access to the camera. I don't own the camera, but you guys have the cameras. There's just so many aha moments still. Like every time you pick it up and you shoot something, and then you get into post, and you're like, oh, right. Or, oh, that didn't work at all. Or this, if I had only moved this over a little bit, this probably would have been better. But I think that and because we're so new and there is no language, it's kind of like we're thinking about it, but the language isn't there yet. Like no one speaks the language that we're shooting right now. Like we're making up words while we shoot.
Yeah, the one that's stumped me the most is camera height. And I guess I would ask you guys, how do you set it? How do you decide?
I have to admit that I like it to be a little higher than seated, but a little lower than standing. So
Yeah.
I'm finding myself, I find that if I do it where I would sit, which is where I naturally wanted to do it, because I was like, that's what you're going to do when you're watching a video. You're gonna be sitting. It feels like I'm in the ground. Like it just feels
Yeah.
like if I put where my head is, but if I go where I'm standing, if I put it at standing height, it feels like I'm floating. And so I've found myself, if I'm standing, the camera is usually sitting right on my chest, on my sternum. And that has been where I have felt when and I'm or 5'8.5" or 5'8" or whatever. So
Mhm.
at that height, I don't know exactly what the height is. I just know, I know it when I see it. but,
Yeah.
but I find that that's the height that I like the most, so far, is that,
That's instinctively, that sounds right to me too. I think that's
yeah,
where I go.
yeah. Cause
Yeah,
it's,
I feel like I've ended up a hair too high and a hair too low in
yeah,
a couple of situations where at the music festival it came together really last minute, and more importantly, it we ended up having just torrential downpours. So this event that was originally supposed to be outside ended up moving to this inside venue, which was great because it gave me even more proximity because now like I just have to like go like right against the stage. And it ended up producing this really fun like they are just right there in front of me look. But I ended up going, I'd say like just a hair above like my height because my concern was that if I was too close to the people, and I know Alex and I talked about this after it happened. He's like, "Oh, I just want to shoot in a room without people," and it was but instinctively I was like, I'm worried about these people blocking the camera, and I think you end up just a hair too high. I feel like if I had been on riser that you could see, then like that little bit of extra height wouldn't have bothered me that much. And I don't think it would actually bother the audience that much. TEDx was a really interesting challenge because, you know, we wanted to be in the front row so we could be as close to the speaker as possible, but we you know, trying to figure out the height of, you know, do we want you to feel like you're sitting in the seat, or do we want to feel like you have the best perspective? And I think ultimately I walked away figuring out that we probably should split the difference just a little bit more, where, you know, I think I would have been a little bit more comfortable if the bottom lip of the camera was kind of right at the stage height. I think that that would have been just enough
I
where I
think
didn't feel like I'm standing while everyone else is sitting, but I'm height appropriate for everything else that's going around me. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, what I think of is a lot of times when I think about where to put the camera, I think of VIP access. Like if I was the most important person in the room, where would I stand? Like, you know,
Hmm.
like, and I, that's where I want to put the camera. That's where I want the person to see it, is I want to say, you know, if I could say, this is where I'm going to sit and you guys can figure out where you're going to sit, that's where I want to put the camera. Like, you know, like I'm the, you know, I'm, you know, like, and so um, I was talking to a venue about shooting even just regular stuff, but also the 3D stuff. And, you know, the venue comes out like, you know, it comes out around like this. And I said, how about right now that, you know, the chairs go across like this, I was like, how about we make a row right in the center that goes like this? And they were like, why would we do that? You know, and they'd only lose like 10 seats. And I was like, because I'm going to put a camera right here and I don't want anyone in the
Yeah.
way, you know, you know, but what happens is when I do this, no one really notices. It's just design. Like it's just a camera in the middle, but I have no seat kills. You know, I don't have no apparent seat kills, you know, from that. And people just don't really think about it because they get there and there's that many seats available and they sit down and there happens to be a camera there. But this is always where I want to put my cameras, right in the center. I'm sitting there, you know, I did shoot one. We were working with a School of Rock, which is kind of fun. They have kids, but they also have adults. I didn't realize School of Rock has adults. It's really fun. And what it meant was though is I could put the camera wherever I wanted it. They were like, we got a friend here that's shooting with this crazy camera. We're just going to let him walk around. So I put it in the center and put it over to the side. But I think that, you know, kind of floating in front of the artist is going to be what eventually we're going to want to watch. I just think that, like when you saw the Alicia Keys one when it came out, I felt like, so I happened to, when she's playing on the piano and looking over at you, I
Hmm.
did an event in her studio and I happened to sit in almost that same position
Mm.
live, you know, with her in her studio. And that was the closest to like feeling like you're like what it's like to be with her, you know, in a studio. And everything else felt like it was overworked. You know, like we're gonna walk over and we're gonna do this thing, and there's all this other band. And with Alicia Keys, you just need the piano, like her and a piano. You don't need anything else, and you just want her to look at you and sing. And I think we're gonna kind of find that intimacy is gonna be really important with the camera. And I think we see glimpses of it in the stuff we've seen by everybody doing stuff right now, but we just don't see anyone really doubling down. Um, you know, doubling down on that experience.
I will
Do you
say,
mind if I share? Oops, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
Brenton.
no, no, yeah, I'll close it up and then toss to you. I will say a really interesting thing that I learned on my last shoot. So a lot of the work that I've been doing, I just inevitably have ended up needing to be like I'm like like slightly off angle, like I'm you know a couple degrees, maybe you know 30, you know 40, and so the camera's either you know kind of facing a little bit to the you know to the left or a little bit to the right, and I discovered that just by happenstance, I had always been able to get a camera position where I could be somehow on the left side of the camera and able to, you know, be able to work with the monitor and you know see everything and check false color and those sorts of things if I want to, like as the show is filming. At TEDx, because of where the camera was pointed and where I was positioned, I ended up on the right side of the camera, and that ended up actually being a pretty frustrating experience because the pop out screen is only on the left side of the camera. And so by the time I'm sitting there and the talks are starting and I'm kind of stuck with my decisions at that point, I was like, well, crap, like if I want to monitor like record time and those sorts of things, you know, you can use the remote camera app, but I also discovered if you use the remote camera app, it sometimes resets some of the settings inside the camera. I need to submit this to Blackmagic and kind
Mm.
of chat with them on the side about it. But it has been a nice thing for the comedy show that I'm shooting on Friday, because they kind of want me in a similar position as where I shot TEDx, where I'm, about 30 degrees, towards like audience right. And so I knew intuitively then to be like, great, well, I'll put the camera here. It'll be at a height that the seat kill is right behind it, and that's where I'll sit. And then that way, like, I always have eyes on the camera, and I'm sitting in the spot that's technically like, blocked and a little bit less ideal. So it's a thing that you have to think about more because of that 180-degree perspective, because you will end up in the shot if you decide, if you're pointed slightly left and you are sitting there, then you're going to be in a convergence break, and that's just not what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it was good lesson to learn in a low stakes environment.
Do you mind if I share?
Yeah. And then we're going to close it up. I know we have a crew in the back. It's cutting away, and I realized the three of us, I think, could pretty much talk for the next 3 hours about this. So we'll have to save it for the next one. But yeah, no, okay.
This is just so we did this Gruber, John Gruber's live show this year and last year, and so we had to decide where, ended up basically choosing to block John Syracuse's view of the event from the front row with our camera rig. And then I'll show you what that camera rig looked like. But this was an interesting studio performance with this Grammy-winning artist, Leela Downs, and her band. And so you can tell here that it's more like a spatial video portal, right? This was before the Blackmagic. What we did was we rebuilt the studio, the actual recording studio in CG, and all, so that's the virtual environment in which you use this. What I wanted to do, this is a little bit funny, like a mistake that we made that you only learn by doing once. I thought that what was weird about the Alicia Keys performance was that it was just me and Alicia Keys and her band and nobody else. And I felt weird about that. It was almost like socially uncomfortable for me to be in there like a stranger. And so I thought, what if we put other audience members into the studio while we're recording this? So we invited a bunch of people in to sit there in folding chairs in the audience, and so they were like basically kind of surrounding her. And at the last moment, I had two PAs there, and at the last moment, I threw one PA on each side back in the corner. And then in post, we realized that was actually a bad mistake. These people kind of looked not so excited, like while they're watching this
movie. It's the hardest thing to manage is people.
Right. And so like you want them to be activated and energetic. And if they're not, then it actually sucks energy away.
If you tell them to be activated and energetic, they'll do weird things. Like
they'll be game show audience. So we ended up cropping everybody out except for this one PA. Yeah. Oops, wait, where did it go? This one PA, this guy is just like there by himself. Shoot, it keeps by himself. And so, lesson learned.
When you were talking about that, I realized something about how I'm so obsessed with getting rid of people. And a lot of it has to do with, I used to be a morning show host at a alternative rock radio station. And so we would have bands come in and I would interview the bands. So it was just me with them, like with Lenny Kravitz, or They Might Be Giants, or, the Innocence Mission, or whoever was the band that I was interviewing. And it was just me or me and one other person or whatever, if I was there. And I realized that I keep on trying to get back to that experience, because for me, that was the best.
It was bliss.
It was kind of like, sure, we can go to concerts, but what if they were just in the room playing with me, and I realized when you talked about it, I didn't really think about it until right now, that there is definitely this, when it comes to music, it's me trying to go back to my experience as a music director, which is, I saw three shows a night. Like I see the beginning of one band, the middle of another band, the end of another band, and then go drinking with that band, and whatever it was, it was like this constant. I was 21 years old and just a music director, and so just wandering around. When I finally, I barely, because it was alternative rock, all these were little venues, like tiny, never more than 500 people. And when I went to a concert, I'd gone to Rush and stuff when I was a kid. So I'd been to open up, for me, big Civic Arena was 16,000. That was as big as it got. But I realized that when I went to see U2 at the Coliseum, I was like, I don't know why anyone pays for this. Like why would, you know, and I wasn't anybody. I was just, someone gave me tickets and I went and I was like, why would anyone do this? Like, this is
Mm.
completely worthless. You know? And so I feel like there's an opportunity with the camera to find ways that it might be before the show, it might be whatever, to have this kind of like what we as music directors had all the time, you know, because, you know, like we would go and, you know, social distortion was in town. And so we just go hang out in the green room with, with Mike, you know, just sit there and hang out
intimacy,
and have,
and
you know,
access,
having that access, and the camera provides this opportunity to get that access, you know, and I think that, that's what I'm interested in, is this kind of VIP kind of like getting you somewhere that you couldn't, not reproducing what you could do already, you know, or you can just be there with everybody. But how do I get something that, unless I was really connected, I wouldn't, you know, be able to get? So,
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the biggest opportunities of this camera.
Yeah,
it really is.
Thank you so much. This is such a fun conversation. So,
yeah,
yeah,
thanks for having me. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do this again in December.
Right.
And so I think it'll be good. Adam, where can people find your work?
Most of my work is at sandwich.co, but the immersive company is sandwich.vision. And you'll find that's where our theater app is. And for Vision Pro, that's where our first app, Television, was, which was a dinky little novelty app for putting televisions in your space and watching stuff.
It was one of the first apps I downloaded. Yeah,
same.
It was great.
Thank you. And you know, the future is so exciting and it's all ahead of us. And I'm so excited that you guys are building, you know, what you're building. And I saw, sorry, last thing I'll say, I saw a movie recently at Vidia. It's around the corner from me, called Richard Linklater's movie Nouvelle Vague, and it's a film about the French New Wave, about Jean-Luc Godard making his first film, and it's basically a movie that's shot about the making of that movie as though it was shot in that time of making the movie. So it's very, very accurate and very it's
so Linklater.
It's like it's so Linklater, and it's perfect. It's such a great artifact. But what it felt like for me was a time 167 new filmmakers made their debut that year that film came out.
Wow.
And it reminds me of where we are right now. Like just new voices, experimenting with new tools, saying new things, and we're all doing it together, and that's very exciting.
Yeah. Brenton, where can people find more of what you're working on?
Frontrow.co has links to our app, or you can download Front Row Experiences in the App Store as of 2 weeks ago.
So great.
Congrats. When I saw that, by the way, Brenton, that Front Row, I thought it was Apple. I thought Apple was coming to Sherlock us with like a theater app.
You know, what's funny is I learned during the App Store submission process that Front Row is a forbidden app keyword, I think for the very reason that you're talking about. So we're working through that fun process. But yeah, it's you know, it's funny. It was a coincidence. We had changed the name already of the my previous company before we started going down that rabbit hole of like, oh yeah, Front Row was it was a big piece of Apple history. So we're you know, we're glad to represent it in the Vision Pro age.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. And again, we'll be back the second Wednesday of every month. So December, I don't have the date in front of me, but the second Wednesday in December, we'll be back, and we'll see. And we might make it a little bigger.
December 10th.
I think December 10th, and I think that we'll have some fun with that. So stay tuned for that. And thanks so much. And bye-bye. We'll see you in office hours tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. as always.